In 2019, one of the most valuable startups in the world was preparing to go public. Investors were pouring in money left and right, convinced this company was about to change the way the entire world worked forever. The offices were sleek and modern, filled with young professionals who loved the flexible environment. The founder was being treated like a visionary genius. The valuation had reached an incredible $47 billion. It seemed like nothing could stop this rocket ship from taking over the entire business world. But just weeks later, that same company would be fighting for survival. Its valuation would collapse dramatically. Its CEO would be forced out in disgrace, and investors would begin calling it one of the most spectacular startup failures of the modern tech era. The company was WeWork, and the man behind it was Adam Neumann. Welcome to Behind the Fortune, the channel that takes you inside the biggest company rises and the most spectacular falls in business history. Every week we tell the real, dramatic stories behind the brands you thought you knew. No boring spreadsheets, just gripping storytelling with the lessons you can actually use. If you're new here, hit subscribe and the bell right now. At first glance, the idea behind WeWork sounded surprisingly simple and almost obvious once you heard it. Traditional office leases were rigid and long-term. Businesses often had to commit to expensive multi-year contracts even if they weren't sure they would need the space for that long. Startups and freelancers especially struggled with this problem because they never knew how big their team would be next month or next year. So Adam Neumann proposed something completely different. What if a company rented large office buildings in prime locations, then redesigned them into beautiful shared workspaces and allowed individuals or businesses to rent desks or offices on flexible terms? Instead of being locked into long leases, companies could scale their space up or down depending on their needs at any given moment. It was convenient, it was modern, and the offices themselves were designed to feel more like creative hubs than traditional workplaces. Glass walls everywhere so you could see the energy in the room, communal lounges with comfortable couches and plants, coffee bars that felt like trendy cafes, events and networking nights every single week. The whole atmosphere was meant to make people feel inspired and connected instead of stuck in a cubicle. The idea quickly attracted attention in startup communities across the country. Freelancers loved it because they could show up, plug in their laptop, and feel like they were part of something bigger without the cost of their own office. Young companies loved it because they could grow fast without signing expensive long-term leases that might trap them if things changed. And investors absolutely loved the growth numbers. WeWork expanded at an astonishing pace that left everyone stunned. New locations appeared in cities across the United States, Europe, and Asia almost overnight. The company wasn't just renting desks, it was selling something much bigger. It was selling a vision. Adam Neumann often spoke about building not just a workspace company, but a global movement that would transform how humans connect and collaborate in the 21st century. He talked about elevating the world's consciousness through better workspaces. He hosted legendary all-night parties where employees drank and danced until sunrise. He encouraged people to work with insane intensity and then celebrate even harder. The offices became known for their wild energy, their sense of belonging, and their almost cult-like culture. Employees felt like they were part of something revolutionary, not just another job. The messaging worked perfectly on every level. Investors poured billions into the company, and the biggest supporter of all was SoftBank, led by billionaire investor Masayoshi Son. SoftBank believed WeWork could become one of the most important companies in the modern economy. Through its massive investment vehicle, the SoftBank Vision Fund, the firm invested billions upon billions. With each new funding round, WeWork's valuation climbed higher and higher, $10 billion, $20 billion, eventually reaching a staggering $47 billion. For a moment, it seemed unstoppable. People were calling Adam Neumann the next Steve Jobs. Magazines put him on covers. Celebrities wanted to visit the offices. The hype was absolutely insane. But behind the scenes, the company's finances told a very different story. WeWork's core business model had a dangerous weakness that almost no one wanted to talk about at the time. The company signed long-term leases on office buildings, sometimes lasting 10 to 15 years, or even longer. They were locked into massive fixed payments, no matter what happened in the market. But the desks and offices they rented to customers were offered on short-term agreements, often month to month. This meant that if demand dropped even a little, the company would still be stuck paying those huge lease obligations while the desks sat empty. And there was another problem that was even bigger. WeWork wasn't actually profitable. In fact, the company was losing enormous amounts of money every single year. In 2018 alone, it lost nearly $2 billion. But investors were willing to overlook the losses because they believed the company was a revolutionary tech platform instead of just a real estate company with fancy decorations. That belief would soon be tested in the most public way possible. In August 2019, WeWork filed paperwork to go public on the stock market, and for the first time, the company had to reveal its financial details to the public and to analysts who were not afraid to ask tough questions. Analysts began reading the documents carefully, and what they found shocked them. The losses were far worse than many expected. The business model looked fragile, and the company's governance raised serious questions that made everyone nervous. One of the biggest concerns centered around Adam Neumann himself. The charismatic founder had built a cult-like image around his leadership. He hosted lavish parties, encouraged employees to work intensely and celebrate even harder, and sometimes behaved more like a spiritual guru than a corporate executive. But the IPO documents revealed something troubling. Neumann had personally borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars against his shares. He had sold portions of his stock before the public offering, and in one particularly strange arrangement, he had actually trademarked the word "we," then sold the trademark to his own company for millions of dollars. The revelations made investors uneasy, but there was one moment that truly shook confidence across the entire market. The IPO filing revealed that despite the company's massive valuation, WeWork was essentially a real estate company pretending to be a technology startup, and real estate companies simply don't receive tech-level valuations. Investors began backing away fast. Analysts criticized the company's finances in public reports. The media began questioning whether WeWork had been wildly overvalued from the beginning. Within weeks, the planned IPO began to fall apart right in front of everyone's eyes. The valuation dropped from $47 billion to around $20 billion. Then analysts suggested it might be worth less than $10 billion. The collapse was happening in real time, and it was brutal to watch. Inside the company, pressure mounted on Adam Neumann to step down as CEO. In September 2019, he finally resigned under intense pressure. But the crisis wasn't over. Without fresh funding from public investors, WeWork was running out of cash extremely fast. The company had expanded too quickly and was burning through money at an alarming rate. There were serious fears it could collapse entirely and leave thousands of people without jobs. At that moment, SoftBank stepped in again with a massive rescue package, but this time, the rescue came at a huge cost. SoftBank agreed to provide billions in emergency funding. In return, it took control of the company. The deal also allowed Adam Neumann to walk away with a massive exit package reportedly worth over $1 billion. Meanwhile, the company itself was forced to restructure completely. Thousands of employees employees were laid off. Expansion plans were halted, and the once sky-high valuation collapsed from $47 billion to less than $8 billion within months. It was one of the most dramatic reversals in startup history. For years, WeWork had symbolized the excitement and ambition of the startup world, but its collapse revealed how easily hype can distort reality. Investors had believed they were backing a revolutionary tech company. In reality, they had funded a highly leveraged real estate business that was burning cash at an unsustainable rate. The story became a warning across Silicon Valley, a reminder that growth alone doesn't guarantee success, and that even the most charismatic founders can't outrun the numbers forever. Yet surprisingly, the company itself didn't disappear completely. After years of restructuring and leadership changes, WeWork continued operating. The flexible workspace idea still had value. Businesses still wanted adaptable office space, but the vision had changed. The dream of a world-changing tech empire was gone. What remained was a much smaller company trying to rebuild after one of the biggest valuation collapses in modern business history. And it all happened because of one simple truth. No matter how exciting the story, no matter how charismatic the founder, eventually every company must face the same test: reality. And when that moment arrived for WeWork, the entire illusion collapsed almost overnight. The story of WeWork is still studied in business schools around the world because it shows how fast things can change when the fundamentals don't match the hype. Adam Neumann had an incredible vision and the ability to inspire people like few others could. He built a culture that made employees feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. He raised more money than almost any startup in history at that time. But in the end, the numbers didn't lie. The long-term leases and short-term revenue model created a dangerous mismatch. The losses kept growing. The governance issues became impossible to ignore. And when the public finally got a look at the real books during the IPO process, the house of cards came tumbling down. What makes this story even more fascinating is how close WeWork came to pulling it off. If the IPO had gone through at the original valuation, Neumann would have been one of the richest people in the world. SoftBank would have made even more money. The flexible workspace model might have become the standard for the next decade, but the moment the public scrutiny hit, everything changed. Analysts pointed out that WeWork was essentially a real estate company with a tech valuation and a cult-like culture. The market punished it immediately. The stock price never even got a chance to trade publicly. The deal fell apart so fast that it became a cautionary tale for every founder and investor in Silicon Valley. Even after the collapse, the core idea behind WeWork didn't die. Flexible workspaces are still popular today. Companies still need places where they can scale quickly without long-term commitments. But the version that survived is much more disciplined. The wild parties and the over-the-top vision are gone. The focus is now on sustainable growth and actual profitability. The company went through bankruptcy in 2023 and emerged smaller, but still operating in hundreds of locations around the world in 2026. It's a shadow of what it once was, but it's still there. The lesson is clear. Vision and charisma can take you incredibly far, but they can't replace solid business fundamentals forever. If this story hit you the way it hit me, drop a comment right now and tell me, which company do you think is making the same mistake today? And if you want the sequel on what happened to WeWork after the bankruptcy and where it stands in 2026, just type sequel in the comments and I'll make it next. Thanks for watching Behind the Fortune. If you love these real business stories, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next one. New video drops every week. I'll see you in the next one.